a powerful veteran, once feared and respected, who lost everything after a brutal ambush left him paralyzed from the waist down. A young black female soldier, new to the base, who refused to follow the script until she did the impossible. Welcome to Black Voice Stories. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-notch stories. The sound of boots echoed through Fort Bragg's hallway as Specialist Jada Monroe adjusted her cap and glanced at the photo of the man everyone called the Lion. Major General Walter Kane had been a legend, a towering, square-jawed soldier who led men through some of the deadliest battles overseas. But after the roadside bomb took out his convoy 15 years ago, the general became a ghost in his own house, confined to a wheelchair, his rage simmering just under the surface. When Jada first reported to the base, she didn't think much of the rumors. Soldiers whispered that Kane was a tyrant, even from his chair, running drills so brutal that a few recruits quit mid-training. But what got Jada's attention was the classified file she wasn't supposed to see, the one that said the explosion that crippled Kane wasn't just an enemy attack. It had been an inside job. Someone on the American side sold them out. That night, Jada sat in the barracks, staring at the file with clenched fists. She wasn't just a soldier. She had a brother who died overseas because of bad intel. If there was a traitor still walking free on this base, she was going to find them. Her first face-to-face meeting with Kane was tense. He was a mountain of a man, even in his chair, his scarred face hard as stone. "You're the new one," Kane growled, his voice sharp. "You think you can keep up with my drills?" "Yes, sir," Jada said, standing straighter. He smirked. "We'll see about that." The next morning, Kane rolled out to the training field, barking orders like he still commanded a battalion. Jada noticed the way the other soldiers stiffened whenever he spoke, like they feared him but also respected him. The drills were grueling, pushing every soldier to the breaking point. Sweat ran down Jada's back, but she refused to falter. When another recruit collapsed from exhaustion, Kane's cold blue eyes landed on Jada. "Pick him up," he barked. Without hesitation, she threw the man's arm over her shoulder and carried him across the field. Kane's jaw tightened, the closest thing to approval she'd seen on his face. But just as the drills ended, gunfire shattered the calm. Bullets whizzed past as soldiers dove for cover. The training field turned into chaos. Jada hit the dirt and pulled her sidearm, scanning for the shooter. Whoever it was, they were inside the perimeter. Jada crawled toward the sandbag wall, adrenaline pounding in her ears. Kane had been pushed to the ground in the chaos, his wheelchair tipped over. Without thinking, Jada sprinted through the line of fire, grabbed him by his vest, and dragged him behind cover. "Who the hell is shooting at my base?" Kane roared, clutching his pistol. "I'll find out," Jada snapped, already moving toward the sound of the shots. The air smelled of gunpowder as she darted between barracks, keeping low. She caught a glimpse of the shooter, a man in army fatigues but no name tag. He was fast, but Jada was faster. She tackled him to the ground, slamming his face into the dirt before ripping the rifle from his hands. "Who sent you?" she hissed, pressing her knee into his back. He spat blood and said nothing. By the time Kane rolled up, flanked by 2 MPs, the man was handcuffed and barely conscious. Kane's eyes locked on Jada, something sharp and unreadable flashing across his face. "You just saved my life, Specialist," he said quietly. But Jada wasn't celebrating. The man's dog tags had been scratched off, but there was a patch on his uniform that sent chills down her spine, the same unit insignia listed in Kane's classified file. This wasn't random. Whoever had betrayed Kane 15 years ago had just sent a message. They weren't finished. Before we dive in deeply, let us know in the comments what country or which city you're watching this story from. We'd love to know how far this story travels. Rain pounded the training grounds that night, soaking the dirt where the gunmen had been taken down. Jada stood outside the MP's office, fists tight in her pockets. The man they caught wasn't talking, not a single word since she tackled him. And worse, Jada overheard one of the MPs saying that orders had come down from higher up to transfer him out before dawn. Something wasn't right. Jada stormed into Kane's office without knocking. He was sitting behind a desk littered with old maps and reports, a bottle of whiskey at his elbow. "They're moving the prisoner tonight," she said, breathless. Kane didn't look up. And we both know what that means, Jada snapped. He won't make it off this base alive. Someone wants him silenced. Kane finally raised his eyes. They were cold, calculating. You don't know what you're walking into, specialist, he said. This isn't just a rogue shooter. This goes back to a mission that never should have happened. A mission they want everyone to forget, including me. Jada slammed her hand on the desk. Then let me help you remember. Sir, let me find whoever did this to you. For a long moment, Kane just stared at her. Then he nodded once. You've got until sunrise, he said. After that, he's gone. Jada didn't waste a second. She grabbed her gear and made her way to the MP's holding area. 2 guards stood outside the door, but they were half asleep, thinking no one would try anything in this weather. Jada moved fast, slipping in through the back entrance she'd scoped earlier during a supply run. Inside, the prisoner sat cuffed to a chair, his face swollen from the earlier fight. Jada crouched in front of him. You've got one chance, she said, her voice low. Talk to me, or I let them put a bullet in your head before morning. The man's good eye flickered. Then he spat out a single name. Colton. Jada's stomach dropped. Lieutenant Colonel David Colton, Kane's former second-in-command. The man was still stationed at this base. Before she could press him further, the door banged open. A guard stepped in, frowning. What the hell are you doing in here? Jada didn't have time to argue. She punched him in the gut, slammed his head against the wall, and slipped out the back before the alarm went off. The base erupted with sirens. Jada sprinted through the rain, heart hammering. She had to find Colton before he knew she was onto him. She found him in the officer's lounge, sitting alone with a glass of bourbon. His eyes narrowed when he saw her, and before she could speak, he reached under the table. Jada dove, just as a shot cracked through the air, splintering the wood beside her. She fired back, shattering his glass and sending him sprawling. Chairs clattered as she charged him, slamming him against the wall. 15 years, she hissed, her forearm across his throat. You set up that convoy. You killed American soldiers, your own men, for what? Money. Colton's lip curled into a cruel smile. You think Kane was some kind of hero? He sneered. He ordered that convoy himself. He knew it was a trap, and he sent us in anyway. You think I'm a traitor? He is. Jada froze. She hadn't expected that. Colton took advantage of her hesitation, headbutting her hard enough to make her stumble. He bolted for the door. Jada gave chase, tearing through the rain-slicked courtyard as MPs swarmed the area. Colton made it to a Jeep, but Jada leapt onto the hood before he could start the engine. The windshield cracked under her boots. She yanked the door open, dragged him out, and slammed him into the mud. The MPs arrived just in time to see her holding her gun to Colton's head. Kane rolled up seconds later, water dripping from his hair. What's going on here? He demanded. Jada's chest heaved. Sir, this man says you knew about the ambush. For the first time since she'd met him, Kane's face faltered. Take him to the brig, Kane ordered the MPs. I'll deal with this personally. As they hauled Colton away, Jada caught the look in Kane's eyes. It wasn't angered. It was something darker, something that told her Colton might not live long enough to face a court-martial. And deep down, Jada had to ask herself the question she'd been avoiding since this started. Was Kane telling her the truth about that day, or was she protecting a man who deserved to stay in that chair? The next morning, the base was tense, eerily tense. Soldiers whispered in the mess hall. MPs patrolled every corridor, and Jada could feel eyes following her everywhere she went. She didn't see Kane until late afternoon. He summoned her to his office, and when she walked in, the air was thick with cigar smoke. Kane was sitting behind his desk, a folder open in front of him. Colton's dead, he said flatly. Jada's heart slammed in her chest. What? They say he hanged himself in the brig, but you and I both know that's not how it went down. Jada stared at him. His face was hard, unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, rage, maybe, or guilt. You killed him, she said quietly. Kane's jaw tightened. He was a traitor. He would have sold out this entire base if he had a chance. I just made sure he didn't get another one. Jada turned to leave, but Kane's voice stopped her. You wanted the truth, specialist, he said. You'd better be ready to hear it. That night, Kane called her into the war room. He had maps spread out on the table, marked with red ink. 15 years ago, he said, I led a mission into hostile territory. I was ordered to take that convoy, even though the intel screamed that it was a setup. I radioed command to abort. They ignored me. Someone wanted me dead. He looked up at her. Colton wasn't lying about one thing. I knew it was a trap. I sent us in anyway, because I thought I could outsmart them. Jada felt her stomach knot. This wasn't the story she'd been expecting. Kane slammed his fist on the table, the maps shaking. They killed my men and left me broken in a dish. And now they're trying to erase what happened. Whoever ordered that convoy is still out there, and they just sent a shooter to finish the job. Jada nodded slowly. Then we find them. Hours later, the base went dark. Power outage. Sirens wailed as emergency lights flickered on. Jada grabbed her rifle and sprinted toward the armory, just in time to see two shadowy figures loading crates into a truck. She raised her weapon. Drop it. They didn't point. One of them fired first. Bullets sparked against the wall as Jada dove for cover. She rolled, fired back, and hit one of them in the leg. The other one charged at her with a combat knife. Jada barely dodged, the blade slicing her sleeve open. She slammed the butt of her rifle into his jaw, sending him sprawling, then shot him once in the shoulder. The truck roared to life, but Kane's voice cut through the chaos. Move, Monroe. Jada spun. Kane was there, in his chair, pistol in hand, firing at the truck's tires. One tire blew, the truck skidding sideways before crashing into the side of the supply building. Jada ran to the cab and yanked the driver out. He was young, too young. He gasped for air, clutching his stomach where shrapnel had torn through. Who ordered you to take this? Jada demanded. He coughed blood. Major. Heller. He whispered before going limp. Kane's face darkened at the name. Heller's not just a major. He's Pentagon intelligence. If he's involved, this is bigger than I thought. Before they could process what had just happened, a shot rang out from the roof. Kane's wheelchair jerked back as a bullet hit the ground inches from his wheel. Sniper! Jada shouted. She dragged Kane behind cover as more shots cracked through the night. The shooter was moving fast, picking them off one by one. MPs scrambled for position, returning fire. Jada grabbed a fallen soldier's rifle, crawled to a vantage point, and took aim. She waited for the glint of the scope and fired. The sniper fell from the roof, landing hard on the concrete. When Jada turned back, Kane was gripping the dirt so hard his knuckles were white. His breathing was heavy, his face pale, but his voice was steady. This isn't going to stop, he said. Not until we take this fight to them. You ready for that? Specialist. Jada nodded once. Then let's take it to them. The next 48 hours turned the entire base into a war zone. Patrols doubled, MPs worked in shifts, and no one trusted anyone. Jada barely slept, her mind racing with what they'd uncovered. Early morning, she found Kane in the motor pool, inspecting a Humvee like a man half his age. He glanced at her, his expression hard. We're not waiting for them to hit us again, he said. Heller is holed up in a secure outpost 30 miles from here. We're going to drag him out before he disappears. Jada felt the weight of what he was saying. This wasn't a mission on the books. This was payback. You know this could cost us our careers, she said. Kane's jaw clenched. I lost my career 15 years ago. I've got nothing left to lose. That night, under cover of darkness, Jada and Kane rolled out with a small team, just 3 trusted soldiers. The rain had turned the dirt roads to mud, but they pushed forward, headlights off, rifles ready. Halfway there, the convoy hit a spike strip. The Humvee fishtailed and slammed into a ditch. Jada barely had time to curse before gunfire erupted from the tree line. Ambush! Bullets tore through the night. Jada kicked open the door, dragging Kane out of the passenger seat as rounds pinged off the metal. One of the team went down screaming. Jada returned fire, dropping 2 silhouettes in the darkness. Cover me, she yelled, hauling Kane behind the smoking Humvee. Explosions lit up the night as grenades rained down. Jada grabbed a smoke canister and tossed it, shrouding their position long enough to flank the shooters. She moved like a shadow, low and fast, taking out 3 men before they even knew she was there. When the smoke cleared, the road was littered with bodies. Two of their own men were dead, one critically wounded. Kane sat in the mud, his fists clenched. "This wasn't random," he said. "They knew we were coming." Jada's blood ran cold. "We got a leak. Someone fed them our route." Kane nodded grimly. "Which means when we get to Heller, we hit him fast." No hesitation. They abandoned the wrecked Humvee and trekked through the woods on foot, carrying only what they could. Hours later, they reached the outpost, a squat concrete building surrounded by floodlights and razor wire. Jada studied the perimeter through her scope. "We'll never get close with those guards out front." Kane smirked, the first trace of a grin she'd ever seen on him. "That's why we're not going through the front." They slipped in through a drainage tunnel, moving silently until they emerged inside the compound. The hall smelled of oil and gunpowder. Jada spotted Heller in a glass-walled office, talking to two men in suits. She crept closer, catching fragments of their conversation. "Tie up the loose ends. If Kane gets any closer, this all blows up in Washington." Her pulse spiked. This was it, proof that Heller had been pulling the strings all along. But before she could move, an alarm blared. Someone had tripped a sensor. Guards swarmed the corridor, rifles raised. "Go!" Kane barked, drawing his pistol and firing back. The hallway exploded with gunfire. Jada sprinted forward, diving through the office door and knocking Heller to the ground. The other men reached for their weapons, but she shot one in the leg and kicked the other in the throat before he could fire. "Talk," she shouted, pressing her barrel to Heller's temple. Heller sneered. "You don't get it, do you? Kane was never supposed to make it back alive. We had to stop him before he exposed what really happened, before he told the world what he did to those men." Kane burst into the room, blood on his sleeve, breathing hard. "Say it again," he growled. Heller smirked. "You sent your men into that kill zone knowing half of them wouldn't make it back. You needed martyrs to justify the strike that followed. That blood is on your hands, General." Jada felt the room spin. Everything she thought she knew about Kane, about this mission, cracked wide open. Before she could react, more guards stormed the hallway. Glass shattered as bullets ripped through the office. Jada dragged Heller behind the desk, while Kane returned fire, his chair jerking back under the impact of near misses. "Move, Monroe," he barked. They fought their way out, bodies dropping left and right, until they burst back into the night. A truck roared to life outside, headlights blinding them. Jada shoved Kane into the back and jumped in after him as bullets chased them into the dark woods. As the truck bounced over the dirt road, Jada turned to Kane, her chest heaving. "Is it true?" she demanded. "Did you send them in knowing they'd die?" Kane stared at her, his face shadowed, rain streaking the blood on his cheek. "I did what I had to do," he said quietly. The words hit Jada harder than any bullet. The truck skidded to a stop near an abandoned barn miles from the outpost. The night was dead, quiet except for the rain tapping on the roof. Jada jumped out first, scanning the tree line, weapon ready. Kane rolled out slowly, his face pale, but his eyes blazing with a strange, dangerous fire. "We can't run forever," Jada said, gripping her rifle. Kane nodded. "We won't." Inside the barn, Jada tied Heller to a support beam, ignoring his muffled threats. She turned back to Kane. "You owe me the truth," she said, her voice cold. "No half answers this time." Kane's hands gripped the arms of his wheelchair until the veins in his forearms bulged. "I sent those men in," he said, voice low and raw. "I knew half wouldn't make it back. But if I didn't, the enemy would have struck the nearby village and wiped out civilians, hundreds of them. I chose my men over strangers, and I've been paying for that choice every day since." Jada felt the weight of those words sink in. The man everyone saw as a legend was just a man, one broken by his own decisions. Before she could answer, headlights appeared in the distance. Dozens of trucks. "They're here," Kane said grimly, drawing his sidearm. Jada grabbed a machine gun from the truck and took up position near the barn door. "Then let's finish this." What happened next was chaos. The first wave of soldiers poured into the barnyard, shouting orders. Jada opened fire, mowing them down in the mud. Bullets tore through the wooden walls, splinters flying. Kane fired from his chair, deadly precise. But there were too many of them. Grenades rolled across the floor. Jada kicked one back out before it exploded, the blast shaking the whole barn. "Fall back!" Kane shouted. They retreated deeper inside, Heller screaming from where he was tied. Jada turned to Kane and froze. He wasn't sitting still, that he was struggling to stand. "General, what are you doing?" she shouted over the gunfire. His face was twisted with pain, sweat pouring down his forehead. He grabbed the beam beside him and forced his legs under him. For a second, nothing happened. Then, with a guttural roar, Kane pushed himself upright. 15 years of rage and regret burned through him as he stood, unsteady but defiant, his pistol aimed at the door. The attackers kicked the barn doors open just as Kane stepped forward, firing with both hands. Jada stared in shock. He was walking, staggering but walking, cutting them down one by one. The firefight was brutal. Jada fought like a demon, covering Kane as he moved through the barn like a man possessed. By the time the last truck fled into the night, the yard was littered with bodies and smoke. Inside, Kane dropped to his knees, breathing hard. Jada rushed to him, catching him before he fell. "You just did the impossible," she whispered. Kane gave a small, grim smile. "No, you did. You made me remember who I was." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Reinforcements were coming. Jada knew the military police would be there soon, and neither of them might survive the investigation. She glanced at Heller, still tied to the beam, his face white with terror. "What do we do with him?" she asked. Kane's eyes narrowed. "We give him to the MPs, let the system deal with him, for now." For once, Kane didn't bark the order. He just nodded, exhausted but somehow freer than he'd looked in years. As dawn broke, Jada stood by the doorway, rifle slung over her shoulder, watching Kane sit straighter in his chair, no longer a broken man, but a soldier ready for whatever came next. He had walked again, and in that moment, Jada knew this wasn't just the end of Kane's story, it was the start of something bigger. The end. Please like and subscribe for more rich stories like this. Do you think they got what they deserved? Comment below. Also, if you really love this video and want to support the channel directly, you can hit that super thanks button below.